Hey, Gobi Society, good vach, Shavua Tov, happy Saturday night. I am so excited to be here with you. And usually I speak on Sunday evenings, but this week there is the Super Bowl. So, and there are people in my family that really the Super Bowl matters to them. So instead of working on trying to adjust everything, we are flexible. And so tonight is the night. And the truth is, like in the short amounts of time, I have gotten so many comments and feedback on friendship. And I do believe that it is something that is, not always comfortable for everyone to talk about. If I hear one more person say, my child is the only child that doesn't get playdates on Shabbos, like, what do I do? And the truth is, for a long time, it seemed like, honestly, Corona happened and a lot of playdates and a lot of people aren't getting together. But as time goes along, and people are changing up kind of what their expectations are for their children and for themselves and for friendship and for getting together, things are becoming more relevant. There are people that are getting together for the Super Bowl. There are people that are thinking about Purim and Pesach and et cetera, et cetera. So, it's interesting. I had not in a very long time gone out. And then, as many of you have been hearing, because I've been speaking about it, I was very privileged to be part of 24/7, and it was the first time in such a long time that I was actually interacting with other people, and it felt kind of interesting. It felt I was a little rusty. I was meeting new people, and it's been a while. So while for ourselves as people, for ourselves as parents, what we can give over to our children, it's a hard thing. So friendship is one of those hard things. And that's why, me with my mnemonics. So I'm thinking that February, flexibility, and friendship kind of all would jive and really make a lot of sense. So I'd like to be able to focus on friendship. So I already have so many comments, and please keep them coming on questions that you want me to be answering with regard to friendship with yourself, with your children. I could just say that the number one answer for adults on what's something that is been hard for you with regard to friendship, like Ruchi, Alana, and Kara have been mentioning. It's just time and opportunity, and I do believe that is something hard. Let's see if together we can try to come up with new ideas, new ways, and new perspectives to take on with regard to opportunity, kind of seizing the moment. And before I get to people's questions, I want to give over just something to start with. And that really is that when we're in crisis mode, my child comes in crying that they don't have a play date, that they weren't invited, that they don't know what to do, or I just see that there's just, sadness, or I'm feeling slighted in any way. One of the fundamental ways to approach friendship is what you do when you're thirsty, which is water. Okay, here's the mnemonic. Water stands for, the W is wait. When your child comes in and says, I wasn't invited to, right? So your initial reaction might be like, okay, so let me go out there and solve all the problem. But really, it would be better for you to take it down, wait, stay calm, breathe. Now, sometimes you can't wait for very long because something's really relevant, but don't, at least pause, because what you're going to need to do is get your brain power on, and let's continue. What else do you do? So first it's wait, watch, wait, just take it down a notch. Okay, then A is really important, and that is add other pieces of information. So if your child says, I wasn't invited to the party, right? And if you initially go in, oh my goodness, she was invited. But then with a little bit more information, you might gather, well, maybe the invitation went to junk mail, right? Maybe only 3 people were invited. So it's not the same type of situation as your brain may have kind of anticipated that it was. you do need to take on more information to be able to then know what to do with it. And it's a good idea for a family, like not to just go right into it, but okay, so what happened? Like, tell me the sequence of events. What happened? Just case in point, on Friday, I was talking to a patient and she's like, yeah, and I wasn't invited. And then, well, really, you weren't invited. Yeah, well, maybe I was, but I don't think it was a true invitation. Well, wait a second. That's different than not being invited at all. So it is important as a parent and as a human being to just take the added time to get some more information. And through that is the T. The T is talk and think about it with your child. It's not the best thing for you to take on, like, okay, here's how I'm going to solve the problem when it involves another person. It really is good practice to involve your child in the thought process and to take the time to be able to do that. So it's not like it should just be 2 seconds. Okay, I've got this. Okay, go back into your room. Like, I'll be with you in a minute. But it really is important. There's a value in being able to really explore the options, talk about it, and think about it with your child. So I guess you presented me with this. This is how it is. Here are some options. What do you think? One of my big pieces is that we empower our children. So if we're just going to solve it and then have the child in the other room, like, that doesn't really work so well. And if we allow for the T, for talking about it or thinking about it and just kind of having that open dialogue, then it's easier to do the E and the R. The E is empathy, right? And empathy really is like, I feel for you. And if you're not having a conversation with your child, then truthfully, you know what's happening? What's happening is, like, you don't have the opportunity to make this into a relatable thing that your child can kind of feel. Oh, someone understands it. Like, someone knows what I'm experiencing, and is not like, hyper focused on the solution, but more on me. And finally, in order to do that, is the R, is relating, right? We relate to our child. We throw in an experience that we think that we had. We make something up, or we kind of use our brain power. You know what this reminds me of? Or, I was even dealing with that with your older sibling when she was younger. Blah, blah, blah. This is, just something that allows for anybody, for ourselves too. It's nice to know that other people are struggling with the same thing that we are. It doesn't feel good to be the one and only person who doesn't have a play date. It doesn't feel good to be the one and only person who's not included. Those things don't feel good on a personal level as an adult, and they certainly don't feel good when we're seeing that in our child. So the more that we can kind of water things down, at least we're starting on an even playing field. And at least we're saying, you know what, like, we're going to make this into something that is going to be not just a solution for the now, but a solution going forward, right? If this is how I handle social problems, great. Do you know what that does? Like, great. We're setting a foundation, and the foundation is so much more helpful than just this isolated incident. And that's why I'm even talking about water as the beginning and not just going straight into the question and answer, because I want to give value to an overall approach and not just the individual specific things. Okay, so in addition to that, so now we have an understanding, okay, we have a game plan of like how to conceptualize the problem, but there's more. How do we conceptualize friendship in general? Like, I have been getting so much feedback about people that feel slighted, right? It didn't feel good to me. I didn't feel like I was the part of it. I didn't feel like I belonged. The truth is, when we are meeting people for the first time, or we're engaged with people like in a way that we haven't in a long time, our sensitivity's up. Like we do. We don't feel as great as adults, and we can see how that would translate with children too. So one of the concepts that I like to share with children is the concept of a rainbow. And what does that mean? So a rainbow has red, orange, yellow, green, blue, whatever. It has different colors. And each one of those colors is important because it's in a sequence, right? It's in an order. But the order, what I like to call a friendship rainbow, is that you're going to have your red friends. You're going to feel closest to one person. Okay. But the good news is, And then you'll have your orange friend, your yellow friend, your green friend. And oftentimes, this is, by the way, a really nice way to communicate with your kids about like, oh, so who are your friends? Like, because it's like a different type of thing than just tell me who your friends are today. But like, oh, like who's red right now, right? So red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, okay. But they change, they grow, they go up, they go down, depending on situation, on experience, on, a whole variety of things. Oftentimes when kids are feeling slighted, or as adults, we're feeling slighted, it's like, oh my goodness, I'm not the red, I'm not the primary, I didn't get the top prize. But really, as long as you're on the rainbow, let's work on ways that we can get you up and down, and things are gonna change. Just like feelings, they change, they grow, they're not always static. And so we have to kind of experience some of the travails and the ups and the downs with our children and their friends in a way that is rainbow-like, to know, like, okay, they're going to go up, it's going to go down, but that's okay. And that our job is to perhaps help to facilitate that, that we're moving, closer up the rainbow, but to know that just like other people have preferences and they have their rainbow, we do too. It's interesting. I asked a patient of mine last week. I said, okay, so, you were upset that you weren't invited to, to a party and whatever. Actually, it was more of like a get-together, a Shabbos afternoon get-together. So I said, well, let me ask you this. Who would you choose if you had like a choice of whoever you wanted? Who would you choose to be in your get-together? And she listed, a couple of people. And I said, that's kind of interesting because that's not any of the people that you're all upset about that didn't invite you. And she's like, huh. I said, yeah, we all have a preference of who we like the most, the least. Now, it doesn't mean that we should be mean, that we should snub people on purpose. But if there are only a few positions, it's okay. Like, that really is okay. And if you really truly like somebody, right, and you want it to go up, then there are ways we can work on ways to kind of get you up there on the rainbow. But that takes work, because all relationships really take work. And so fundamentally, this rainbow idea is something that we can think about with our kids when they are invited, when they aren't invited, that sort of thing. And, but I keep on getting all these comments like, okay, so what am I supposed to do when? Okay, so your child, okay, so one of the big issues that I think comes up a lot is, what do I do to have my child go up on the rainbow, right? Like, where should I be going with this? What should I be telling my child to do? So I think that as a parent, you have the opportunity to either pave the way for your child and kind of like solve all the problems. Like, should I be calling? I get this a lot. Should I be calling that other person's, mom and saying like, can my child get the invite? So I think that we have to kind of empower our children to do some of these things for themselves and not in any way to helicopter and to take care of it. Now, if it is really essential, meaning if, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity and there's one spot and I really need it. Okay, if you want to make a phone call to your friend, go ahead. But in general, some of these things are more, again, like life skills, and it would be great to empower our children to do it for themselves. So how do we do that? Okay. So question number one that I was asked is, my daughter is shy. Okay. So how do I help her? How do I push her to do, to make any sort of effort? So there are definitely children who are pulling back and are shy or are anxious. And especially, like I was mentioning, in today's day and age, we all have been, or many of us have been rusty for a really long time. So one of my fundamental beliefs is positivity connects. You start off slowly. So if you have on your agenda that you want your child to have, 7 play date opportunities, every week, and that they should be social and that they should be, be invited to everything, then I think we have to adjust our expectations a little bit for some people, or for all of them, and say, wait a second, my child is shy. So perhaps what I should be doing is really pulling back on the expectation and growing it slowly. So So number one would be maybe not insisting that she have a play date every week. Maybe not insisting that she even gets a play date. Maybe it's about texting, communicating, just helping just to start to facilitate some of that communication from the beginning. Like, let it go, seriously. Because why? So two things. Number one is by doing that, you're communicating that you're in a relationship with her and that you see her for what she's up to. And that's invaluable because that is empowering and that really makes a big deal. But besides for that, when she feels good about making that connection by trying the texting, by working on it on the degree that she's able to, then that is going to help to bolster her for the next thing. And that really makes a huge deal and a difference. So let's adjust our expectations and work on it slowly. What else you could do for a shy child? You can model for them. You could give them some words. You have to ask, okay, so if they're not putting themselves out there because it's uncomfortable, why? So maybe they don't have the words. Maybe they don't know exactly what to say. Well, good news. In a very safe environment called your home, you could be practicing, perhaps giving them some words, perhaps role playing with them a little bit. It's not out of the realm of ordinary to be able to role play. We do it all the time before an interview, right? People do it all the time. And I think that in that way, that would be a great way to connect with your child and to really say, you know what, I hear you. Okay, so this is good. What can you do if a child isn't shy? Like, they are not shy. I got a question that was, well, what do I do? My child's friends are not in their orbital thing because of COVID. And so they don't have the same people that they've been hanging out with every day at recess. And they're not shy people. They just don't have anybody to sit with. So they're literally like just sitting by themselves. So with regard to that, what you could do is push, pull, connect. What does that mean? So let's help them to push forward by asking if they could join in. And how do we do that? Because that's obvious, right? Well, first we empower them. We say, you know what? Who is there in the class that you actually think are nice? Right? Who is there in the class that you actually think are fun, right? If your child is fun loving, right? And they're just like, who in the class is fun? So once you find, have that open dialogue, okay, so you have somebody who's fun in the class, what could you say to them? What do you think? And perhaps even just fine tuning, making sure that you like their words, you like what they're saying, like that. Okay. And then, okay, so great. Try that and see what happens. Okay. That would be the push. The push is really that you help them to push forward, to be, asking, but based on what they like, their own preference. The pull would be if you help them to find something that would pull people towards you, towards them. How is that? Maybe by bringing in something into school that they could really enjoy with other people. So if it's a game, if it's art, if it's a ball, boys, it seems to be, if you're athletic, there's like this unspoken language that you can be joined in just by virtue of the fact that you want to play a game. And it doesn't even have to be athletic, running around, just energy, So if you're starting with disadvantage because you don't know the boys or you just don't feel comfortable with them, then bring something to the table. Yeah, bring the ball in. Just have an idea that you could, really allow for other people to kind of come to you. The pull. Some schools have been kind of not allowing for certain cards to be brought into school. But if your school isn't, then, that would be a great opportunity for you to involve yourself in helping your child by giving them what they need in school, to pull people in and then and then connect. So you might not have the opportunity during the day to showcase your best self. And your kids are the exact same way. There are some kids that do great in a crowd, amazingly well. They enjoy it. It brings out their best self. It's amazing. But there are a lot of kids who don't. And for those kids that don't, it's nice to be on your own turf. It's really nice to be able to connect with somebody else for them to see what you're all about. And how do we do that? Well, it's going to take play dates outside of school, opportunities outside of school. Now, there are more limited opportunities. That's true, but are they completely, are we devoid of all opportunities? Now, unless you're really, really sensitive, and you might be, no, there aren't. There's definitely more opportunity to have. And it's hard, but it's for the mindset and the mind frame of, you know what, I know what I need to do to be able to allow my child to showcase themselves, to be able to, and when they come over, make sure that if your child is, creative or artistic or musically inclined, that somehow we get that in, because that would be so important. If they're actually coming over, you want them to get to know your child, and you want that ongoing connection to help them allow for them to be on the rainbow. And that's really important. So the push-pull connect really is something to help for any child. And I think that really is important. Now, another question I've been asked is, okay, so if I'm going to put in the effort into my child, but let's say, how do I know, it's been such a long time, and how do I know that my child's friends are good for them? And I get that question a lot. It's well, they're now in a new orbital. I'm not really used to some of the kids that they're hanging out with. How do I know that really is good for my child? So I have a couple of rules about that. The first is the 80-20 rule, meaning what? If your child is fighting with somebody for a majority of the time, then something is off, and something in the dynamic just is not working so well. So if they are, fighting some of the time, okay, 20% of the time, that's fine. Even if we, under these circumstances, we can bump it up a little bit more. But if it's really a 50-50 experience, not so great. The second thing is, if your child is constantly irritated and irritable or demanding after a play date, before a play date, it's kind of like an indication that something is not exactly right. And oftentimes when we go to a fish store, we end up smelling like fish. There's some remnant, as you can see, of something that kind of stuck with your child after the play date, after the experience. And that's something to look for. Because it's really not so pleasurable to, every time that your child hangs out with a certain person, this is just what happens. That's a red flag, if you ask me. But having said that, so then the follow-up question that many parents ask are, okay, so then what am I supposed to do about it if my child really is not in a relationship that I think is healthy? I think that oftentimes, as parents, we set certain guidelines and rules and just things that we find to be valuable. And then all of a sudden, comes along somebody and our child is like, no, I'm taking that value. I'm going with that thing. This is not where I'm headed with this. And it's very hard. Now, depending on the age, this is kind of something that perhaps is, we have more of a control or just the capability to alter things at this stage of the game when they're younger, not so much when they're teenagers and older. But that is really, so what would I do under those circumstances? So I'm of the belief, kind of like in dieting, it's the kind of thing where it's easier to replace than it is to withhold. I think that it's really much easier to not tell them, don't talk to this person anymore, but rather to work on ways that they can be more flexible. Yay, go flexible chart. And this is something that, that you could definitely use, but ways that they could incorporate other people too. When we make an effort for them to be incorporating other people, either through a rule of, every week there should be a rotation. It shouldn't be the same play date, twice in a row. Or it could be something like, as long as you also have something with with these other people, then sure that we can take turns. Or when people that we do like come over, we make a really great pitch and they get the better snack, and all of a sudden they're being wined and dined. But when this other person comes over, it's like just kind of a regular plain play date. Those things really help to nurture the idea without actually stating it to our kids that like, no, this matters and this is important and I want that, and I feel really good under these circumstances, as opposed to saying you should not be playing with X, Y, and Z. And the reason being is that it could backfire. There are those kids who, if you tell me no, then I want it so much more. And we don't want to have to contend with that. So I think that, again, we can reinforce the positive instead of reinforcing the negative. Okay. Another important question that has come up is my child wasn't invited to a party, and I don't know if I should be getting upset with my child, but I think that interesting. But I think that she really was invited, but she didn't know that she was invited. Okay, so this goes back to water, right? So when we first react, we can't react so negatively. We have to kind of wait. And now we have to take in new information and understand. So what exactly happened? Was it that there was a misunderstanding in the invitation? Was it that there's an expectation in a different way that we just, that she expected to get invited first? I don't really know the situation, but I do understand that if you're not sure whether or not there was an invitation, then there's something else going on. And I think that oftentimes, we look at a situation, and I don't mean, we should not, kind of be negative to our children and be like, oh, you know what, it must have been something that you did. But I do think that oftentimes it does ask, we should be thinking about, okay, so wait a second, what's actually going on here? Is there something, are there any rules, social rules that perhaps my child is not following? Is there a situation where, the class just is not made up of children that kind of jives well with my children? Is there something else that I should be understanding that leads to the situation that we're in? And I do believe in many cases that there are definitely things that come up, and that it's not the core issue that my child wasn't invited, but it's kind of like the symptom of something larger. I have a question that was asked, like, give me some rules of people. What are some things that I should know about that would allow for my child to make sure that my child is doing it right? So I've used this mnemonic, and I'm going to continue to use this mnemonic because it's just one of those that are like just great. But the mnemonic of push. Okay, so there are 4 fundamental rules that perhaps would be great just to make sure that your child is doing when they're going out there for the first time, and for ourselves too. Like when we put ourselves out there to be friendly, there are 4 good principles to start with. So the first one is start in the positive, right? Push, P, start in the positive. Why? Because in general, when we start in the positive, and that is that that your child is approachable. Are they smiling? Are they looking positive? Are they saying positive things? Or are they just not approachable? If someone's actually trying and they're like scouring or not, not looking like very happy, that's not going to work. So we don't really want that. We want them to stay positive. Okay. And positive is also in the form of, are they giving compliments to other people? Now, I know when it comes to boys, it's a little bit hard, but like, yeah, good one. Oh, that was a great catch. Or like just something that allows for the positivity to come through is really important. It puts value to then everything else that comes forth after that. The U is, are they being themselves? Now, what do I mean by that? There are different ways that you talk and you interact with other people. A U is just, you can have great things to say, and you can have a lot of value to what, how you're talking. You don't have to, what I call, wow them. What does that mean? Wowing someone is making some grand talk, some grand gesture, some grand, like, oh my goodness, like I just met blah, blah, or I just came off the plane from, like something that is just wowing as opposed to relating. And people like a wow for like a minute, but they don't relate to a wow. And so to wow somebody is kind of like to overstep the boundary into something that is like too excited. And again, that's not going to allow for great great communication. It's nice for, for the media, it's nice for perhaps, your page, but it's not great for relationships. And so really what we want to do is we want to make sure that what we're saying to our children, or what our children are saying, are not wowing, but rather you. Be you. Just be yourself. Like, it's fine. And if they don't have what to say, it's not the worst thing in the world, by the way, to talk to them about what they might want to say under certain circumstances. Again, to prep them, to discuss it. You might be like, well, that's just weird. It's really not. It's not weird to go in prepared, because relationships take work, and it is, some people just have it on their fingertips, and some people don't, and that's really okay. So it's okay to discuss with them. Oh, well, here are a couple of when someone comes over, here are a couple of discussion topics, or let's role play a little bit, and that really is okay. But being you is one of those essential, fundamental rules of people that are very important. The next is the seesaw, S. So what's a seesaw? It's a give and take. Right? If you're hogging the conversation, or like what I'm doing right now, I'm just speaking, like I am speaking. However, I should say, if anybody wants to ask more questions, I have some that were, prepared from before, from getting from your feed, from my feed. But, I would, that's why I'm talking, and I will continue to talk. But anyone is welcome, just saying. But essentially, there has to be a give and take. Now, there has to be a give and take in the relationship too. If you're noticing that your child is bringing in things and doing for that person, and just kind of like this mentality of just giving and not getting any back, we have to look at that, because that's not a healthy balance. I really don't believe that it is. I think that it's something that, we don't want. Nobody should want it. It doesn't feel good. It was interesting. When I went to the 24/7 experience, it was amazing, and it was so gratifying. But 24/7 does something where it's a chesed organization, right? So they're constantly giving, and it happens to be that they're constantly giving, and they have it like it's all volunteers, and it's all like anyone who wants to give back, it has been chosen, could give back. They don't ask for anything in exchange. But relationships in general are not like that. It's like not at all. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel really good to the person who is doing all the time, and it doesn't feel good to the person who's receiving all the time. There really does have to be a give and take. If for example, that your child is like, getting somebody's support, like their friend is going over things with them at night, and every night they're the ones that, being taught by their friend, we have to think about, okay, so where can I give back? Like, is it to be, give them a fun time? Is it that, experience something else? Should I be having them over? Should I be like, and it's not like, oh, I should pay for the fact that no, but it just doesn't feel good. There should always be a seesaw, a give and take, and I don't think that it is something that, that our children don't feel also. And in conversation, for sure not. You can't just keep on going in conversation and just expect that the other person is going to just be listening. Now, there are those listeners and there are those talkers. Okay, but still, it's not good. It doesn't follow the rules of people. And finally, the H is the hook, right? So our children, we have to, with ourselves, some people do it naturally and some people don't. What is a hook? A hook is something that you have in common with somebody else. So if you're going to be focused on, on just your own interests, not so great. If you're focused on the hook that they have with each other, that would be great. If you know that your friend is artistic, then incorporate that in some way. Have your child incorporate that in some way in the playdate experience, or just getting to know somebody else, like thinking about what the hooks are. So, do they like sports? Do they like Lego? Do they like, do they like art? Do they like, what else? Are they smart or they're very motivated at school? Are they really into their car? Like, what else is there? And incorporate that in the relationship that you have, as long as, again, it's something that resonates well with you, but even not. A hook is like to bring them in. It's okay to ask about it. It's really important to ask about it. By doing that, it makes a huge difference, because it allows for the person to feel like, I've been heard. Like that feels good. That it does. It makes them feel much, much better. So, those are some fundamental rules of friendship. Now, it looks to me like I have a question about something that's being obvious. So, how do we talk to our children? So if we get straight on, right? And we're like, okay, so I see that, you have no friends, like there's nothing going on. Like, that would not be a great approach. The obvious, meaning like that they know that they weren't invited to something. So there are different ways to say it. And I do think to start in the positive is definitely the best way just to approach it. Like giving them a compliment about either how much they tried, or about how, they've been looking so, wonderfully, or, that this is something that you see that they put in so much effort into, or that, that they have, so many opportunities. Like, I would definitely build them up to start with. And then I would mention to them, but, it seems to me like this is something that, that you don't have right now. So, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I'm going to ask if if we can work on this together. And then, of course, I would add the piece, this is something that I've experienced, or this is something that that is just so typical. I hear this all the time from people that I know, from my kids' friends, or it happened to me. Just normalizing it, I think, can go a really long way. Empathy is one of those things that is truly felt. Like, if you really do care, right, and you really want that there should be this deeper connection that your kid really feels, or that connected with you, or honestly that you really feel connected with somebody else. I had the privilege to be able to meet with someone recently, and the truth is, like, I wanted to give over to them that I really hear you, like I really care. And so, there are ways that we can really get to that too. And that is what I had mentioned before about having a heart, right? Like, how do we show our child, not in an obvious way, like, the question I was asked, like, how do we show them obviously that we really care? How do we give over empathy? How do we give over empathy to our children? And how do we give over empathy to anyone that we're trying to show that we care and that we want to connect with? So that really is that we give our heart. So the H is that we hear them. Oftentimes, that's really all that our kids need, is just to be heard, because there is so much value to just being heard. It's not the same as the solution to the problem, but it really makes a big deal when you know that someone is carrying part of your burden with you. That's really important. So being heard, just allowing them to tell what the story was, like what actually happened, what's the problem, is really a big deal. Okay. Then the E is, how do we empathize? Now, as many of you can see, I use my hands, right? There's the nonverbal empathy in the gesture. It's in the touch. It's in the hug. It's in the nodding. It's in just like the thumbs up, the high five. Those things give that all body experience, which are really, really important in allowing someone to really believe that you're hearing what they have to say. The A is asking, not telling. What does that mean? So if we're just going to give over information, without actually having like a reference. Do you want the information? Do you want my idea? Do you want my solution? Do you want to hear anything that I have to say? That's not okay. That's not empowering. That's kind of like, it's slighting them. It's like, well, I want to give it over to you, but even if you don't want it, I'm still going to give it to you. Not cool. Like, no, that's not right. So if you're in a conversation and you're trying to get to know something about what's happening with your child and give over empathy, or even with a friend, it's good to ask them what they want. Would it be okay if I gave you over, whatever it is? And then the R is what I've mentioned before, is how it relates to yourself. People like to feel like they're part of something else. So if my child is the only child that experienced this, that child's not going to feel so good about themselves. But if it's more like, okay, everyone goes through this sometimes. Now, it doesn't take away from your pain, but it certainly just like makes it something that that we can relate to, right? And then finally, and this is important, is the T, which is try really hard as a follow-up, right? So you're having this moment with your child and you're, helping the social piece, and you're going forward with it, and you have these ideas. So it's good for you and for your child to know, like, you're going to ask them again about it. It's going to be something that you can continue to talk to them about. And the truth is, friendship, it's not like, okay, great, we brought in a jump rope and everything worked. No, it's going to take time. We're going to have to monitor. We're going to have to check, like, okay, how's that rainbow going? Have we gone up on it? Have we gone down? Like, all those things are really important. So in order to do that, we have to have that T. We have to try to follow up. We have to try to allow our child to know that, like, we're going to follow up with them, allow anyone that we're relating to that we're going to follow up with them. And the truth is, like, it's going to need follow-up. It doesn't just happen. It doesn't just like stop after 3 seconds, okay, great. So I said this one magical thing and now my child has a friend. Like, it doesn't work that way. So that's really important. More questions, more comments. Let's see. What else has been sent to me? Okay. Okay. So I've gotten a lot of the ones about the Super Bowl party. People are really feeling like they, that their child for the first time had an opportunity to be invited to something and then didn't actually get, and that's really a hard feeling. So what do we do with this? Like, how do we help them? So as I had mentioned, we try with water to stay calm and to really like understand all the details, and then to think with them kind of a little bit outside the box. But let's say we're doing the push-pull connect with our child with regard to this. Our child, has the empathy, we're good with it, and now, like, what actually can I be doing? So once we find out whether it's possible, now again, it's Saturday night, tomorrow night is the Super Bowl. It might be too late to be actually, having your child kind of navigate to see if they could be doing any inviting. If they don't want to be doing inviting because they just feel uncomfortable, this is a moment, it could be a moment of flexibility, because again, that's what this flexible chart possibly could be for, again, trying to like, incentivizing the effort, because the effort really matters, and then reinforcing it like, okay, if you do the inviting, and here's like, let's go through people that we could invite. I'll go get the chicken nuggets and be doing something, and together, we can try to make this happen. That might be a possibility. It is really great even just to go through the motions. Now, many of you have been mentioning, well, what do I do? Like, my child's hurt, like they tried and it didn't work, or, they were waiting for an invitation so waiting for an invitation and actually like reaching out and trying to do the invite are two separate things. It's really a different type of skill, and it really is more empowering for the child to be advocating and trying to do for themselves. So where could you get involved with that? Well, you can help them to write the text. You can make them feel like the text really, that you're partnering together. You can help write it. You can help send it. You can, give them more of an opportunity to, choose the menu and pick out all the different things just to get them involved with it, because it really isn't the easiest thing in the world to, to put themselves out there, and for the whole family to really strengthen them and allow them to feel like, you know what, you're doing a great thing. Like, this is something that is, powerful, and you're showing strength and bravery and power. Now, let's say it does fall flat. So that is hard. What it does, it's definitely going to be an ego deflating experience. And then again, we have to think about, like, why did that happen? Perhaps people were invited. Again, they may not be the top one on the rainbow. Okay. That might be an opportunity for them to reach out to relatives or cousins or whoever, be like, okay, so, it didn't work with that group. Okay. But we still have other people in our lives. And when that happens, that would be a nice idea for relatives to be able to pick up the, pieces, and cousins to be able to join. That's always something that parents, us helicopter parents can facilitate. That's fine. But advocating for themselves, just getting the words out there really is important. And it is hard. It's definitely hard if they aren't able to, if it doesn't come to fruition, but at least they tried. Okay, let me see other questions. Okay, anybody have any questions? Hold on. Okay, here's another one. Again, what can I do? What can I do when my child refuses to make an effort? Okay, so I do hear that a lot. As we had mentioned, oftentimes, with a shy child, we have to understand that it's not so much about, like, what is it that is holding her back? So is it that she has already tried and it just wasn't successful? Is it that she doesn't have the words? Is it that, you were asking too much too quickly? And it really is the greatest experience to feel successful. And so if your child is a shy child, it would not be in their best interest for you to push them to do more. It rather undervalue, right? Do less than what you would have considered to be anything, and for her to be successful. And if she's successful, it will grow. It might take time, but it grows. And for her to feel good about herself is so much more valuable than following the trajectory of what you think would be successful, because that's just not fair. So let's make the expectations lower, go as low as possible. It might be that the expectation is literally going to be that she, practice with you of what to say. Okay, great. High five. That's awesome. Then we're going to practice some more, and we're going to do it again. We're going to role play again until finally maybe we'll find somebody. Then we can practice it on a relative, right? On a cousin. Then we can do it on it doesn't have to be necessarily have 12 play dates and just get it all done, right? We really want to feel successful. All of this, we want to be successful because success grows and changes. And we also want it to be relationship building. The more that your child feels the trust that you give and that you're partnering together and that they really understand you, the better off it's going to be. That is way more valuable than the success on one isolated, experience, because by doing that, it really makes a much bigger deal and a difference. Okay. More questions. Let me see. Okay, so does this apply to adults also? Yes, of course it applies. As adults, we experience so much of what our children experience, just in a different form. For children who literally have to put themselves out there every day, and then they go back on Zoom, and then a short while later, then they're in a different orbital with somebody else who's not really their friend, and their friends are in a different recess experience. It's like it really does. It's a hard thing. It's not easy. Friendship is not easy. It's definitely a job, and it gets easier when you have the the continuity, but when you don't, it's very hard to do. And so for that reason, we have to kind of appreciate that some of these things are going to take a little bit more time and they're not going to be as easy. But when we get into a habit and we get things going, it's going to be a lot easier. As adults, yeah, it would be great if we had more opportunities, perhaps, but we haven't. We haven't had them in a long time. And so at least some of us haven't. So, it feels rusty, and it feels like, the first day of school mentality. And that's not easy for us to feel as people. And it's really just not that easy. So, I appreciate so much as an adult, on a smaller level, what children feel. And especially around the holiday times that I get a lot more questions and comments about it. Purim is like a big time where people kind of comment and they question and they, getting shalach manos and just like, this year it's on a Friday, so maybe I shouldn't, but like, do you think I'm going to get any? And it's like, it really does. The, Corona for a long time took this, the social piece for a lot of people and just said, let's put it on hold. But then as people evolve and change and open things up, it takes on a different form. And now some of the pressures, especially around the holiday times, are back. And so I think that we need to kind of look at that and appreciate that with our children, and within ourselves. And, I think that the sensitivity that we could perhaps give over when we're doing it with our children is really important, because let it resonate. Like, let there be something that we can relate to, because then we can really help them in the best way possible. The push, pull, connect is really important to allow for us to get involved with our children differently than just helicoptering and being like, okay, so let me get that invite. Like, let me just solve it. No, it would be really good for us to empower them. And by empowering them, what happens is it's going to be for the next situation and the next situation and the next situation. So that even if they're not invited for right now, that's okay, because they know how to handle it. And I think that when they don't fall apart and when they are able to handle, and when, they put themselves out there, that is where reinforcement really matters. And that's where the efforts that you're going to put into bonding with them and then appreciating with them and just really putting whatever you can to be able to help them is going to nurture that strength that they have from within themselves. And we can't solve all of our children's problems. We can't make this friendship stuff go away. We can't. But what we can do is empower them to want to continue to try. We can empower them to want to relate to us and talk to us about it, partner with us. And then most importantly is at the end of all of it is we just want to make sure that they have a good sense of self, that they are feeling good about themselves. Some of the ideas about understanding why our children choose which friends they choose is really about a reflection of how they view themselves and what they're doing with, with their self-confidence and their self-esteem. And it's important for us to always be, recognizing that and nurturing it, because if they feel good, like I was saying, that positivity, if they feel good about themselves, and what's going to happen is that it translates. It makes it something that is going to be for forever in other relationships that they have, to put themselves out there with other kids, put themselves out there with new situations. And so that social piece is really important, because it's a reflection of just, again, how they're relating and then how they feel about themselves. So are there any other questions, comments? Okay, so I'm going to be continuing to talk about friendship because I know how important it is. And please feel free, continue to, ask me about different friendship questions, different topics that we haven't discussed. And I look forward to being able to continue February friendship and flexibility. All right, bye guys.